I view our relationship as a relationship forged in battle.
The story of the most controversial war of modern times.
You secretly agreed that you would support an invasion of Iraq. Is that true?
It is complete rubbish.
It became obvious that the Bush people had decided they just wanted to go, and they didn't care whether the weapons were there or not.
The story of how the British people came to question the very integrity of their Prime Minister.
Were you lying?
No.
Over the past few months, Tony Blair has given a series of in-depth interviews to Times columnist David Aronovich, describing as never before his years in power. For the first time, we are able to tell the full, inside story of the Blair decade. This week, how Blair invaded Iraq.
I think this is the most fundamental struggle of our time, and there is only one place to be, which is in the thick of it, and trying to sort it out.
Tony Blair sent British troops into action more times than any Prime Minister since Churchill. Before Iraq, there was Kosovo, Sierra Leone, Afghanistan.
Here's a fella who's willing to stand for what he believes. In the face of criticisms or political consequence, he was willing to say, this is what I believe, and I'm going to stand strong. And I admire those kind of characteristics in people.
Blair believed he could change the world for the better and was prepared to use the British military to do it. But his moral certainty led to actions which cost him his popularity.
I hope in my heart that one day the Prime Minister may be able to say sorry.
He feels, I think, evil triumphs when good men do nothing. He does really believe that if something ghastly is happening, we have a duty to try and stop it.
Tony Blair's first major foreign crisis erupted when he had been in power less than 2 years. The Serbian province of Kosovo was sliding towards civil war, and Blair feared a repeat of the atrocities unleashed by Serb leader Slobodan Milosevic in Bosnia.
In the early 90s in Bosnia, we decided not to intervene. 750,000 deaths later, we realized that we had to.
The Conservatives had kept Britain out of the Balkans. Blair changed this. But when NATO launched a bombing campaign against the Serbs, Milosevic responded by expelling a large part of Kosovo's ethnic Albanian population. Blair believed that only the threat of an American invasion would stop Milosevic. But his close ally, President Clinton, was reluctant to commit American troops to such a remote conflict.
For Clinton to take the step of actually saying, okay, I'm going to insist that Milosevic backs down no matter what it takes, was a huge thing for him to have to do.
As the ethnic cleansing continued, some American papers turned on Clinton. The president thought the British were spinning against him, and during a transatlantic phone call in mid-May, he confronted Blair. Blair's senior foreign policy advisor was listening in.
There was a rant, really, from Clinton, and you could sense that Tony Blair was holding the phone a little bit away from his ear, and when he could get a word in edgeways, he would calmly, rationally explain what he thought would have happened. There was an angry Clinton and a calm Blair.
Slowly, argument by argument, Blair managed to win Clinton round.
And it was only really when Clinton, to his credit, actually signaled that the Americans may be prepared to put boots on the ground that Milosevic folded and the thing was over.
The Serbs withdrew without a fight. This was widely seen as Blair's victory, and it made him a hero with the Kosovan people.
For Kosovans, Tony Blair is a living hero. A few months ago, I visited a primary school in Kosovo. And while I was shaking hands with the pupils, one of them told me his name was Tony. I said, why? And he told me it was because of the huge respect his father had for Tony Blair.
For Tony Blair. I think it was a courageous position from the perspective of what was right, what was wrong. I think the British position was the right one, to move forward and to end this outburst of terrible violence, of mass rape, mass killings in the Balkans.
For Blair, a clear sense of right and wrong would now become the guiding principle of his foreign policy. In Chicago in April 1999, he outlined what became known as the Blair Doctrine.
We have learnt twice before in this century that appeasement does not work. If we let an evil dictator range unchallenged, we will have to spill infinitely more blood and more treasure to stop him later.
My view, as outlined in that Chicago speech, was that we should regard ourselves in political terms living in an international community, that if there was a problem in one part of the world, it would affect the other part, and that we should regard ourselves as under an obligation to intervene and to help. To me, this is an aspect of the modern world in exactly the same way that it matters to us economically, so it should matter to us politically what happens in different parts of the world.
But the conflict in Kosovo had taught Blair a second, equally important lesson.
I believed then, and I've come to believe this even more strongly in relationship to other conflicts, that if the international community is united and presents a united front, and eventually we did in Kosovo, then it becomes a lot easier to resolve these issues with the minimum of bloodshed.
If Europe and America stuck together, they wouldn't need to fight. That was the lesson Blair drew from Kosovo. Just a year later, Blair again faced a foreign crisis, this one even more remote. The elected government of Sierra Leone was under threat from brutal rebel factions. When British troops were sent to evacuate British citizens, a group of them were taken hostage.
And it was a possibility, I'm not exaggerating, but hostages would be tortured, skinned, eaten. I remember saying to him, but you know, we have actually got the SAS there. We could do something. He said, is it very dangerous? And I said, yes, extraordinarily dangerous. Are you going to get some people killed? I said, almost certainly. But if you don't do it, something worse could happen.
I can remember just this look on his face, and he was just sitting at the desk in the corner, and he was kind of looking out, and I kind of felt what he was thinking. In the end, he is the guy who has to sit and sign a piece of paper that says people he's never met, people he doesn't know, never met their fathers or their mothers or their brothers or their sisters. He's sending them off possibly to get killed. And that, I think that does take you to a position that very, very, very few people ever go to.
Blair authorized a rescue mission. It was a success. The rebel movement was quickly defeated and collapsed. Unlike Kosovo, in Sierra Leone, Blair had deployed troops straight away, and it had worked. His belief in moral intervention was now allied with a confidence in his own judgment.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack.
The moment I saw what was unfolding and realized the scale of it and realized the likely cause of it, I did feel
a really deep sense of mission. You know, I took a view then that the interventionism that I had promulgated as a policy around the time of Kosovo was going to have to be extended and used, but probably in very different circumstances and in circumstances that were going to be, you know, profoundly disturbing for people.
Blair felt his hour had come. Before 9/11, Blair's Chicago doctrine was little more than good intentions. To intervene effectively around the world would need American power. Now the vision was shared.
The thing I liked about Tony Blair was is that he could project, he could see. Tony Blair clearly saw the threats facing civilization after September the 11th.
Before 9/11, Bush had been even more reluctant than Clinton to commit American forces abroad. After 9/11, Bush became as keen as Blair to reshape the world around them. The two men quickly formed a genuine bond.
To me, it's easier to deal with a person who just believes in some basic fundamentals. And we didn't have long religious discussions. I mean, you know, what do you think of certain passages in the Bible? But I think it's more of kind of a psychology and a mood. It's just a general trust. I don't know if Tony Blair would ever say George Bush is my great personal friend. You know, he may. But I can tell you that my relationship was one that was comfortable. We laughed a lot. He kindly laughed at my corny jokes, and I laughed at his not corny jokes. I view our relationship as a relationship forged in battle. A relationship that was writing the first chapter of this ideological struggle against cold-blooded murderers who kill the innocent to achieve political objectives.
Is that how you see it too?
Yes, I do see it like that. I mean, I think this is partly about the modern world and Islam's place in it, but it's also partly about whether people are able to create, you know, disputes in which people end up hating each other rather than reconciling. And it is a struggle for a generation. I don't have any doubt about that at all.
So honored the British Prime Minister has crossed an ocean to show his unity with America. Thank you for coming, friend.
The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
Osama bin Laden was quickly identified as the man responsible for 9/11.
فإن جهاد الأمريكان وإن قتال الأمريكان هو من صميم الإيمان.
The attack on the World Trade Center was the culmination of a series of attacks, including the bombing of the US Embassy in Nairobi in 1998, in which 214 people died. Bin Laden was operating from Afghanistan, and going after him meant going after Afghanistan's fundamentalist Taliban regime. Blair now embarked on a whistle-stop tour of the world's capitals, seeking to build an international coalition of the type that had defeated Slobodan Milosevic. It was a job for which he was particularly suited.
One of his great strengths is his power of persuasion, both at the level of charm. He had, oozes charm. He could articulate arguments better than any other world leader on the international stage.
Stephen Wall was the man who handled Blair's relations with Europe.
Of all the politicians that I worked for, he more than anyone had supreme confidence in the rightness of his own judgment, even more than Margaret Thatcher, I would say. So from the word go, he thought that he was right, and he thought that his powers of persuasion would prevail.
Blair was soon reaching out beyond traditional allies.
I remember going to see President Putin, and he was very supportive, because he had been saying for years, no matter how much you criticize me in Chechnya, please understand, this is an extremism that's going to erupt on you.
Blair's chief foreign policy advisor was present during the talks.